MTK Pro Bs once again. Remember, subscribe. And I'm delighted to be joined once again by the knowledge, Spencer. Fearon, how are you, bro?
I'm blessed, bro. I'm blessed. And it's an exciting time for boxing right now. So, you know, it's all good.
Yeah, we definitely gonna get that in. I saw you shining last Friday in the MTK show. Again, top analytic skills once more.
Come on, man. Like, I'm just grateful for that platform, for it to go out to ESPN. I think ESPN Plus has got some, I don't know, 10 million or 15 million subscribers. It's mad, the numbers that they got. So it's kind of cool because it's building a market for me out in America, because people are hearing me to spit the bars out there and to speak about the sport that I love emphatically. So, you know, it's all good, man.
Funny enough, that very same night, Tyson Fury did an interview. We saw that. And he basically kind of sounded disheartened, said he might even fight Wilder again. And guess what? The following week, we get the announcement that the contracts are signed. How about that?
You know what? Don't listen to Tyson Fury, but he's not trained. I stood beside him, man. Me and him, we had a good little chat. I haven't seen Tyson Fury in flesh, even though we've spoken over on social media and we exchanged words, but I haven't seen him in about 5 years. So to see him, how he's gaunt in his face.
Yes.
Right? He ain't drinking no 12 pints. Right? And he's eating properly. You can see just by, seriously, the guy, he dwarfs me. I'm 6 foot, he's 6'9". You know what I mean? So I'm just happy. I made a couple rants last week that fight has to happen next, and the powers that be, the fight's happening next. So I'm really, really looking forward to that fight.
You think he kind of, with his comments, he kind of forced the hand on the promoters, Bob Arum, Eddie Hearn, Frank Warren? No,
I don't think he forced the hand. I mean, I think Tyson Fury is a very, very calculated human being. And he's a very, very smart man. Very, very, he's very intellectual. And I think it was always on the cards anyway that this fight was gonna happen. And you know what? He kind of did force the hand, but I think it was gonna happen anyway. I mean, he's too big a fight for it not to happen. It had to happen next. And, you know, I'm glad that is happening next.
It feels kind of surreal that, you know, they've actually signed the contracts. We're just waiting for, you know, a good site fee to come in and a date. Some critics out there in the boxing community are saying, look, what are you guys getting excited for? It's not done. They just signed contracts.
What are you talking about? It's signed contracts. That's the major thing, right? The major thing is that they signed contracts. Before it was agreed, it was just agreed for them to fight. And there was no contract pertaining to these two gentlemen climbing into the ring. A contract's being signed. So I don't want to hear all the naysayers and all the rest of it. For it to come this far, when we've seen fights that have escaped us for 10 years and then happen 10 years down the line where two guys are old, they made maximum money, but the fight wasn't the fight that we should have seen. I love Floyd Mayweather versus Manny Pacquiao, right? So when people say, oh, but it's not, no, the thing's signed now. So there's no more talk, it's signed. It's signed, it's going to happen, period.
What did you make of Frank Warren's comments that, you know, Eddie Hearn shouldn't have leaked out the information without them all doing it together?
No, but that's Eddie Hearn. We know what Eddie Hearn's like. Eddie Hearn's the guy who wants to be first. And that's how it is. End of the day, it's signed. Listen, Eddie Hearn and Frank Warren ain't brethren, you know. There's no camaraderie there. There's no, you know what I mean? There was the person that got them to sit down to discuss this fight, and that was Daniel Kinahan, right? We all know this. He was the person who, and if he's not involved in it, then it's not gonna, because it's all egos and everything else. And I'm not knocking Eddie Hearn for doing what he's doing, because Eddie Hearn's ego right now sells. So he's got to do him. So he's just doing him. Eddie Hearn's being loyal to himself, who he is. I can't knock Eddie Hearn for that. Frank Warren should have known that Eddie Hearn would do that. Bob Arum warned you, like he is like a kid in a sweet shop. So he has to be the first. I've got to be first. And that's what comes. That's him. So I can't knock him for being himself. You know what I mean? Take people for who they are and not for who you want them to be. Okay? Right. And especially if I know somebody, and I know that's what you're like, you can't surprise me with anything you're doing. Right, you can't.
To be honest, I think some people argue and say, look, you know, the boxing needed a lift. You know, people around the world needed a lift, you know, that watched these two amazing fighters. And how about slipping them a bit of good news? Because there's been delay upon delay, and people are getting a bit impatient out there.
But slipping who the good news? It's out now. We know that fight's going to happen. What's the problem? No, seriously, what's the problem?
Yeah. Again, I think Frank Warren sort of indicated that there was some form of agreement that they'd all, you know, announce a contract signing together.
Have you not realized he had no business? Eddie Hearn don't care about Frank Warren. Frank Warren don't really care about Eddie Hearn. But Alan Sugar Ray Leonard versus Roberto Duran in 1980, the first fight. What happened? Was that June 1980? The first fight, what happened was Bob Arum and Don King, who were staunch rivals, sat down and negotiated a deal together, right? To make these two mega stars of boxing fight each other. Now, I'm not saying that Anthony Joshua and Tyson Fury are as big as Sugar Ray Leonard and Roberto Duran. You know what I mean? Because those guys are top 10 pound-for-pound fighters of all time. But let's judge Anthony Joshua and Tyson Fury when their career's over, because potentially those guys could push to be like two of the greatest heavyweights produced in recent time of greatness. So we got to back those guys. But I'm saying Don King and Bob Arum didn't like each other. So, but they worked together. That's how it goes.
And recently we saw, only last February, we saw Al Heyman and Bob Arum work together for the Wilder and Fury fight. So, you know, it's possible.
Yeah, exactly. It is possible. Right? And there was Bob Arum. I remember Bob Arum was complaining, saying like how Al Heyman doesn't work with nobody. But they made that fight happen. So, you know, it can happen. If it, you know what I mean? If it makes dollars, it makes sense, right?
100%. Do you know what? In some ways, look, you know, some people are really happy that, you know, it's taking place, but there's a bit of disappointment that, you know, due to the pandemic, we can't have it at Wembley Stadium. Because if you remember Joshua Klitschko in Wembley Stadium, 90,000 fans, that day, it was absolutely electric that day. One of the memorable days.
Okay. But at the same time, there'll be more people watching that fight around the world than 90,000 people scrammed inside of an arena, right? Let's just be real. I think economically, if it was over in the UK or if it was over in the UK and we had 90,000 fans, it'd be electric because the economy is going to grow from it, right? That's what will happen. The economy will grow from it. Businesses within the area will grow from it. Tourism will grow from it. But we're in a pandemic right now, where it's difficult for people to fly out. You know, it's not easy. So it's a different time. So what we have to do is this. It's a great fight. More people watch that in their house than 90,000 people that be there live in person to watch it, right? But this can generate still a massive buzz. A massive buzz, even more so because we're in a pandemic. More people be inclined to buy that on pay-per-view, right? And the fight being sold, right? Let's just be real. You've got 1 and 2 of the greatest promoters this country's ever produced in Eddie Hearn and Frank Warren, right? Eddie Hearn is flying the flag right now as the star boy promoter who's come out of the UK, and he's doing his best now to try and conquer the Americas. It's not gonna be easy, but he's trying, and we have to props him for that. And we can't knock anybody's ambition. We can't knock Frank Warren of all the great nights of boxing that he has produced over the years. Frank Warren was embedded in my childhood, right? So these two have come together, and there's an amalgamation there, and you've got Bob Arum, the legendary promoter, in the mix as well. This is going to be a fantastic fight. fantastic fight where everyone it's going to lock the world. The whole world's going to tune into it because these are not two men who are past their peak, but they're still smashing. No, these guys, they're in their physical peak. You know what I mean? And the fight's happening, and we got to enjoy it.
The question of okay, so we look at some of the variables, right? Ahead of this fight happening, inactivity, Tyson Fury. By the time the fight's made, it'll probably be a year and a half.
Yeah.
In any way, is that likely to affect Tyson Fury? Because
no,
the boxing IQ is that strong. Yeah,
his boxing IQ is very, very strong, but it's not that. You look at the guy, you know, he's training, and we also know that Anthony Joshua has been non-stop in his training. So you got to think, when was it? So we flip it within, what's that, a year and a half, Anthony Joshua's boxed twice, right? He's boxed twice. But Anthony Joshua had mental demons to overcome in his second to last fight. And then those demons could have still been there going into his last fight against Pulev, right? But Anthony Joshua came out on top. Anthony Joshua, he boxed very well. I think like Anthony Joshua was stamping his authority to say like, I'm going to show you my versatility, and he did that. So I don't think the time of him being out the ring isn't going to damage him that much because he's in the gym and he's sparring, so he's being active. And not only that, but he's cut a lot of weight, right? So it's not just the fact of, oh, well, Tyson Fury not fighting. There's been loads. Listen, what about all these little undercard fighters who ain't got no fights because the pandemic's on right now? You know what I mean? I'm seeing this right now. I'm doing my work for ESPN, right? And I'm doing my work for ESPN on the MTK Global shows. I'm seeing kids who haven't fought. Isaac Lowe, when's the last time he boxed? He boxed the other day. Do you know what I mean? So it is what it is. It's the way of the world right now, how the world is. It's not by design to say, okay, well, Tyson Fury, you ain't gonna be fighting yet, or we're trying to hold you back. It is what it is. So, you know what? Kind of in a way, it kind of makes it even more interesting, the fight. And that's the truth.
Hey, one thing I do know is when the fights take place, the game plan's going to be key to victory, 100%. You know, I did see some article today that Mayweather says, you know, he's willing to help Joshua out in training, you know, with a few tips.
I think Anthony Joshua should take it, regardless whatever tips they may be, but I think Anthony Joshua should take the tips from Floyd Mayweather. When you think of students of the game, Floyd has really studied boxing. I remember speaking to him. He said, I watched all the masters till I became a master. This is about 5 years ago when we hosted him. The first time he came to London to do the dinners, I was the first person to host Floyd Mayweather. And we had a good little chat after. He said, man, you know your stuff. I said, yeah, Uncle said the same thing. Roger Mayweather gave me that badge when I was in the gym and Roger's trying to test everyone. And it's like, nah, this guy, yeah. So I'm saying, like, Anthony Joshua should take whatever advice he can take from anyone. This is not an easy fight. But I know how Anthony Joshua could win the fight. I definitely know how Tyson Fury could win the fight. So it's one of those things, but I like to see body language on the build-up and everything else to see how that fight would really go. But I am very, very much so looking forward to it.
To kind of interject, you know, with what I was kind of saying, that, you know, there's arguments for both. That's what I'm trying to say. No,
but they're saying like, oh, well, Anthony Joshua just got to put it on Tyson Fury. Like it's that easy to put it on him. Like Tyson Fury is not a masterful boxer. Let's be real. But, you know, I tell you one fight that Anthony Joshua should be watching. He should be watching Sonny Liston versus Cleveland Williams. Was that 1958? He should be watching that fight. I'll tell you that now for nothing. He should really be, that's the second fight. He should really be studying that fight. Because Cleveland Williams, now we're not talking about the Cleveland Williams in was it 66, who fought Muhammad Ali, that Cleveland Williams was done. It was a done fight. Don't disrespect Ali. That's one of Ali's greatest performances, right? But he was done then. But the Cleveland Williams that fought Sonny Liston, how Sonny Liston's approach in dealing with a taller man, because Andy Josh is going to be the short man in this fight. Was Andy Josh 6'6", right?
6'6", yeah.
He's 6'6", Tyson Fury 6'9". About the same weight disparity between Sonny Liston and Cleveland Williams. But how Sonny Liston would subtly take away the jab of Cleveland Williams. Cleveland Williams jabs faster than Tyson Fury's. Mm-hmm. It was harder than Tyson Fury's, right? But how he took away the jab, but just by frying back his jab, a methodical jab to just above the chest plate to the solar plexus, right, to lower the hands so he could come with his right hand. And he just should study how Sonny Liston would maneuver with guys who were quicker than he, by how we just trap them and look to wrap them up. But he would do it technically. That's who you should be watching. For this fight, definitely. But then, in saying that, Tyson Fury is a historian. I want you to know this. Tyson Fury is a historian of boxing. I've spoken many times of boxing, especially prior to his Klitschko fight. When I was at Sky, me and him sat down in the Sky studio. We sat and we spoke boxing. Properly spoke boxing. I said, right, this guy knows the thing. Right? Not a fight that you could liken for like Tyson Fury to be watching, but more so like just on the fast 1-2s and using your size. Definitely could watch Ali's comeback fight when he fought Jerry Corey in, what was that? That was in 72. So what was it, 72? 1970, my apologies. You don't know, yeah, 1972. That's, I would say, yeah, have a wonder on that. But it's going to be a great fight, man. I'm really, really looking forward to it.
Yeah. When I interviewed Johnny Nelson back in December after the Pulev fight, he maintained that Fury does not go the distance with Joshua. You know, he's been consistent with that. Would you kind of make of that?
Johnny Nelson is entitled to his opinion. This fight isn't going to be an easy fight for either man. And Johnny could be right for once. You know what I mean? But, you know, I could definitely see how Tyson Fury could win this fight, but not easily. It wouldn't be easy. And I could see how Andy Joshua could win this fight, and it wouldn't be easy. And that's what makes this a great fight. All
right, man. Hey, Spence, man. Good for catching up, man. Hey, do you want to do a quick tribute to Marvelous Marvin Hagler, who sadly passed at the weekend?
Marvin Hagler was the guy. It was the guy. You know what I mean? If we watch boxing now, the mantra of hard work, dedication goes to Floyd Mayweather. Because of now, if Marvin Hagler was around today, we would say that he worked harder than Floyd Mayweather. I've met Marvin Hagler on a few occasions, and on the time when I've met him, he walks with a kind of deformed walk, and that's because he used to run with logs on his back. Marvin Hagler was the one that brought it up. I'm going into training camp, seek and destroy. He was that guy. Marvin Hagler's like, his standout win has to be Hagler Hearns. What was that? April 15th, 1985. That was the standout win because Tommy Hearns was being so destructive. And prior to that, Tommy Hearns blitzed Roberto Duran in 2 rounds. And if you watch that fight, and people say it's the greatest fight of all time. No, it's the greatest 1 round because the first round was ridiculous. After round 2, Hagler just stuck it on him. And then we hear afterwards that Tommy Hearns broke his hand in the fight and all the rest of it. But no, Tommy Hearns could have opted to box. He's a superb boxer. He could have opted to box Marvin Hagler. But it was mano a mano. It was, yeah, come, let's do this. And Hagler, who was a superb boxer, not given his dues as a boxer. You don't believe me? Go watch his fight with Tony Simpson. Go watch his fight with Mustafa Hamshaw, teaching young kids now. Go watch Marvin Hagler's fight with Mustafa Hamshaw, and you realize he was a superb boxer. Remember, when he fought Vinto Antifermo, and that was November of '79, on the undercard of Sugar Ray Leonard versus Wilfred Benitez. Sugar Ray Leonard got $1.2 million for that fight, challenging for the world welterweight crown. Marvin Hagler fought on an undercard, challenging for the world middleweight title against Vinto Actifero, which was given a draw, but Hagler did win the fight, right? And Hagler got $40,000 for a world title fight. So you can see, like, Hagler is the original blue collar fighter. Hagler was that guy who had that appeal. And when he came over here in 1980 and he beat Alamina for the world title, and it was the undisputed title at the time, and he beat Alamina for the title. And there was a lot of racial effigies behind everything, and Alamina stated that I'll never lose my title to no black man and blah, 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 and all the rest of it. And he paid the copper for it because Hagler battered him, right? But the nicest thing, and I witnessed this, that I saw Alamina when Marvin Hagler came over here for a dinner, and I went with my old sponsor, Danny Mardell, who's passed away now. May Danny Mardell, may his soul rest in peace, the coolest guy on the planet he was. And Alamina actually apologized for all he said. And I witnessed that. And like I'm saying, fall far from the tree, because they were really good friends after that, right? And Ross Minter, Alan's son, I'm really cool with Ross. Remember, Alan died last year. So knowing that the two of them guys now are in boxing heaven right now, discussing old fights and everything else. But Marvin Hagler was actually a superb fighter. And if you really want to learn boxing, just go and watch the 1983 fight between Roberto Duran and Marvin Hagler. And you'll leave there knowing, like, wow, skills in abundance these two men demonstrated. So, you know what I mean? Marvin Hagler's a superb fighter, absolutely superb fighter. He had grit, he had spite, you know, he could switch, and he could switch without effort. So you do southpaw really good because he was a southpaw, but he could box orthodox equally as good. Such a great fighter, such good timing. Certain guys that he beat, Wilfred Scipio. If Scipio was around now, he'd be a world champion. Hagler claps him out in one round. You know what I mean? Hagler was the guy. His fight with John the Beast Mugabe, that is a wow, what a fight. Yeah, man, Hagler was the man. You know what I mean? Unfortunately, he left boxing kind of better. But when you look at it in hindsight now, he left boxing on top with all his faculties. Yeah, million, I think it was 15 million he got for the Sugar Ray Leonard fight in April the 6th, 1987. Mad money.
I was actually watching that fight the morning that he passed. How ironic. Right. That's mad, isn't it?
It's crazy. And you know what? Like last week, I don't know what got me, but I was just watching loads of Hagler fights. I was watching Hagler versus Roldan. Roldan was meant to be like the first man ever to floor Hagler, but it was a slip. But he did catch him in the first round, and Hagler went over, like, got scuffing over the top of the head, but it was actually a slip. But yeah, Marvin Hagler was the guy, man. Seriously, was the guy. And he I would say that he should be on boxing Mount Rushmore for how he was and how he fought. And yeah, I got a lot of time for Marvin Hagler. May his soul rest in peace.